Last night I put it on, also because I wanted to see what was going on. And I can see, I thought for the most part I could hear almost everyone. I did think that sometimes when people turn like this to talk, it's amazing how fast it breaks off, especially when people are up at the podium. If you step to the side and you're talking, you're gone. So we want to be sure that we do that. And I think we should all remind each other if we see something that's amiss with our mics, don't take it personally. Just say, you know, Ms. Vargo-Hefner, you're not talking into your mic or your mic's off. Also tonight, we want to try and run a tight ship in that sense, see how it goes. I have Aileen in the back, and she's actually watching the meeting on YouTube, and she will come in and tell me if we have any real offenders or if there's a problem going on. So we will do that. Also, I would ask then, in order that we are sure that our audience out there hears us, that wait to be recognized. I will probably cut you off if you interject, whether it's up here or somebody from out there. Whoever is speaking at that point is speaking until they're done and someone else is recognized. So hopefully that'll work. And also at this point, I think, you know, it's safe to say to people who want to come to the meeting, I'm not discouraging or encouraging anyone regarding attendance. I would just say you're going to be temperature checked. You're going to have to wear a mask. And I would ask if you show up, you probably want a social distance in the chairs. And we should all be okay then. So with that said, are there any questions? So microphone on, voice activated here. Okay, we're going to go to confirmation of appointments. Mr. McGee? Oh, and by the way, you don't have to scream into the mic. Just talk, and I'm going to work at it. We all have to enunciate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Can everybody hear me well?
I
Okay.
hear you.
Resolved by Northampton County Council that the following individuals shall be confirmed in their appointment, reappointment as indicated thereafter. We had a committee meeting earlier today, and they were all moved for full council. The Children and Youth Family Advisory Board, the following. Reappointment, Susan Grassi, term to expire 4/1 of 2022. Frank Porgato. Reappointments to the Children, Youth, Family Advisory Board. Marcus Grundy, C. David Howe, term to expire 5/1 of 22. Farmland Preservation Board, reappointments, term to expire 6/30 of 23. Robert Dorr and Terry Cromer. Industrial Development Authority, reappointments, term to expire March 17th, 25. Peter Albanese. Mental Health, Early Intervention and Development Programs Advisory Board, appointments, Carrie Miller, term to expire 1/23 of 2023. And the Workforce Board, Lehigh Valley, optional category, reappointment, Danielle Adams, term to expire June 30th, 2022. So moved.
Thank you. Are there any questions, discussion on any of these people? Seeing none, call for the vote.
Mr. McGee.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mr. Lott.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Vargo-Hefner.
Yes.
Mr. Minsky.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mrs. Ferraro.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Thank you. I have no one signed up for courtesy of the floor. Is there anyone who would like to approach the microphone and speak to council under courtesy of the floor? Seeing no one, we'll move on to the county executive report. Mr. McClure, do you have a report?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. President. The county council has been incredibly proactive in helping us combat the COVID-19, the coronavirus in Northampton County. So much so, Council, that your efforts have led to us being able to report this week that there are currently no active cases of COVID-19 in Northampton County Prison. Council, that is a credit to you and all the efforts that you've put in to helping flatten the curve by having the courage to allow us to have people telecommute, by allowing us to have people at home in reserve as the second largest employer in Northampton County. You did that. Council, we're down to nine positive folks at Graysdale. 9, so in-house. And there are a few out in the hospital, but 9 now. That is, when you consider over 200 have been positive for COVID-19 in Graysdale, that is some real serious pandemic progress. And I thank you for all the support that you've given us in our ability to work there, especially giving us the flexibility to go out very early and get the personal protective equipment that we got. One of the challenges we had, the federal government really let us down, really let us down in the beginning of this pandemic. One, we didn't have a test early enough. And then when we did have a test, we didn't have enough testing because we didn't have the reagent to isolate the RNA strands. But 2, the CDC guidelines on the use of masks was very problematic, in my opinion, early on. So you were only getting issued an N95 mask if you were directly working with someone who was known to be COVID-19 positive. Now, we know now that that isn't going to stop the spread of anything, right? So once we were able to ratchet up our PPE and get PPE to everybody, we saw we could start to get the spread of COVID at Graysdale and at the prison, because there's universal masking at the prison. It works, and we thank you very much for helping us with that. And I think very soon we're going to be green with envy over that. I think you're going to find that we're all going to need, maybe within the next week, to get familiar with the rules of living in a green county. And that is in no small, this is my prediction, I have a crystal ball, it is in no small way because of you and the mitigation efforts that you engaged in and allowed us to employ, including, I don't think any other county partnered with a hospital to set up a drive-through COVID-19 test site where you didn't need a doctor's prescription, which was a great deterrent for people. They didn't want to get a prescription from their personal care physician, and they couldn't very often. Their physicians weren't giving to them if the physician didn't think they had the sufficient CDC symptoms. So I think you owe yourself a great deal of credit if we happen to hear tomorrow Governor Wolf saying we're going to green next Friday. I just have this strong feeling we're going to hear that tomorrow. So good job. With that said, the virus is still out there. One of the things we do know from our test site is that 5 to 6% of the people who are showing up there with symptoms are COVID positive. Now, that's 5 to 6% of people with symptoms. So, you can judge the prevalence based on that. We have approximately 305,000 people in the county. So it's out there. It's not overwhelming right now, which is why I think we might be getting to the green. But it's still out there, and we need to understand, Council, that there's still risk, right? And we need to encourage folks to continue wearing their masks, continue to stay socially distant. It's very important. Continue with good hand hygiene because it can come back. And I know of no employee other than at the prison or Graysdale who has been diagnosed with COVID-19 since we brought everybody back to work. And this is really good news, right? Because we're back, everybody came back several weeks ago. So if the mere coming back was going to cause a spike in coronavirus amongst our workforce, we would be seeing it already. That doesn't mean we've eliminated the risk. We can't eliminate the risk until there is a vaccine and herd immunity, which all the experts say is 2 years away, right? So there will be risk. We will probably have positive cases in our workforce. But because we're requiring everybody to wear a mask, because we're doing temperature screening, we're going to try and be able to catch that quickly. And one of the things, I know employees often listen to your meeting and we communicate with them regularly, but if you're sick, stay home. That's one of the biggest weapons we have now. And in Northampton County, I think Ms. Kelly talks about this, far more articulately than I do. We have a lot of leave time. Northampton County, we have a lot of leave time for many different reasons. Mr. Heckman, I think, understands this as well as anybody. But if you're sick, stay home. So that's good news. No COVID. COVID decreasing rapidly at Graysdale. No COVID in the prison. Doesn't mean we have no risk. We do, but keep wearing masks, keep checking temperatures. So if we do hear from Governor Wolf tomorrow that we're getting a green, I think that we have done everything we possibly can as a county government. I don't know that we have left any stone unturned on the health side. And now we get to turn to the recovery on the business side. And we get to turn to the recovery on the municipal government side, whether it's Lower Saucon Township that has needs, or Northampton Borough, or Hellertown, or Williams, whoever has these needs, Nazareth Borough, Upper Nazareth, you're going to be able to meet these needs very soon with the CARES Act plan. So not only are we going to be helping small businesses with the CARES Act plan, we're going to be helping the municipalities who desperately need our help. So remember, when you're thinking about the CARES Act plan, we didn't talk a lot about municipalities last night, which is why I'm focusing on them tonight. Your municipalities really need your help. Even if the deferred capital purchases weren't directly related to COVID, now when they're looking at their tax revenues declining for next year, they're going to have to defer even more of those capital purchases. Fire trucks in the city of Bethlehem, for example. I mean, and we're going to hear from all over the county, from all of the municipalities, what their needs are, and we're going to be able to fill a great, not all, but we're going to be able to fill a great many of those needs, and it's going to be very important. It's going to be a credit to County Council that we do that. That concludes my report, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. McClure. Okay, now I have no old business to discuss. Is there any old business anyone wants to discuss? I have no old business. I made the first mistake. I have no old business to discuss. Does anyone have any old business to discuss?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Myers.
I have a question for the executive. Can you hear me?
When you move your head, you fade in and out.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
I have a question for the executive.
All right, he's standing there.
Mr. McClure, are we officially done testing at the end of June at Easton Hospital?
Yes, we are. Our agreement with them concludes on June 26th, and of course, that facility is changing hands on June 30th. So we are currently in the process of discussing with healthcare providers what we can do to continue our COVID-19 collaboration with a healthcare provider somewhere in the county, because I think, Mr. Myers, it's important that we be able to keep an eye on what's going on out there, and maybe even catch a spike.
That was my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Is that it, Mr. Myers?
For now, yes.
Okay. All right, any old business then? All right, seeing none, we're going to go on to new business. Now, the first order of new business, I'm actually going to end up punting this to Ms. Vargo Hefner. We had passed the ordinance that had the 685-2020, the budget amendment ordinance. We were subsequently informed that there was an error on it. Now, originally it was thought that you could do a resolution to change that because it had been done in the past. But in further research, our solicitor has said that it is his opinion that we will have to do an ordinance. So that is why we're introducing this ordinance. You want to sponsor this?
Yes, please.
All right, so Ms. Vargo Hefner is sponsoring. Is there a second?
Okay.
Ms. Zirinsky is seconding it. There will be a public hearing, debate, and possible vote will be held at the July 2nd, 2020 meeting. All right, wonderful. Now, we'll move on. The next order of business is the consideration of a resolution approving an application to the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency seeking funding under the CARES Act for a rent relief program. Mr. Lott, would you please introduce this?
Yes, I will. We discussed this yesterday in our committee meeting, and do you want the whereases or just the therefores, Mr. Chairman?
I think the therefores, unless someone wants to hear more. Okay, no, just do the therefore.
Now it therefore be resolved by the Northampton County Council that DCED will be designated as the department to administer any funding received from the PHFA CARES Rent Reimbursement Program is hereby approved. The county executive is authorized to execute and file any forms necessary to apply for this funding and receive any financial assistance from the PHFA, which has indicated its willingness to make available funds to carry out the Northampton County Community Eviction Diversion Program. 3, the county executive and the DCED is hereby authorized to provide assurance and/or certification as required by the PHFA and also provide any additional documentation that may be requested.
Very good. Generally, I come to committee meetings, but there was a medical situation yesterday, so unfortunately, I missed both the meetings. However, I did go back and I did watch on YouTube. So I got to watch some of this. I have a question on this. This is being administered through CHCLV, if I'm not mistaken? No. All right.
Deputy Director Barbosa is here, and Frank Brooks is. I'm sorry. Deputy Director Barbosa is here from Human Services, and Frank Brooks is here if you have granular questions, but it's going to be administered by the Department of Human Services and the Department of Community and Economic Development in Northampton County. This particular program.
And the courts are involved in this?
They are.
That's what I thought.
They necessarily have to be.
That's what I thought. So the courts will be involved in this?
Yes.
And then other than that, it's a total in-house situation?
Yes.
All right.
Right? I'm correct about that? Yes.
All right, no, thank you. Ms. Hefner, you have a question?
And is this the form?
Dear, I can't hear you from here.
Sorry, my mic's on, but I'm not.
Well, you got
close
that
enough.
welder mask, so be careful.
There you go.
There you go.
Is this the form that they're supposed to use? It's a CLV form? It just says Program Participant Application? Because we were given some documents today because they weren't available, so it's not clarified how people would do this.
No, that's not the document that will be used.
Okay.
Okay, are there any other questions on this particular issue? I mean, it's a worthy cause. I didn't see any documentation until I asked Linda this morning, but I'll support it. All right, no other questions? All right, call for the vote.
Mr. Lott.
Aye, yes.
Mr. Henson.
Yes.
Mr. McGee.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mrs. Ferraro.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda, we have consideration of a resolution for approving to apply for and accept funds through the COVID-19 County Relief Block Grant. Mr. Lott, would you please introduce this resolution?
Sure will. We discussed this in committee quite extensively yesterday, And I will read it now. If therefore be it resolved by Northampton County Council that the DCED will be designated as the department to administer any funds received from the COVID-19 county block grant, and that the county executive is authorized to execute and file any necessary forms, file any forms necessary to apply for and receive this funding.
Thank you. All right, now we will have discussion. What I'm going to do is I'm going to offer an amendment to the resolution right out of the gate. All right, if my amendment to the resolution is now the therefore be it resolved, replacing the language that is there and the language that I want is to be now therefore be it resolved by the Northampton County Council that DCED will be designated as the department to receive any funding. All distributions shall be subject to the approval of Northampton County Council that are received from the COVID-19 county block grant, and that the county executive is authorized to execute and file any forms necessary to apply and receive for this funding. So that's, do I have a second on my motion to amend?
I'll second.
Ms. Vargo Hefner seconds.
Can you please repeat that?
Yes, I will. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Northampton County Council that DCED will be designated as the department to receive any funding. All distributions shall be subject to the approval of Northampton County Council that are received from the COVID-19 county block grant, and that the county executive is authorized to execute and file any forms necessary to apply for and receive this funding. The only real change is county council is put back in the mix.
Yeah, we received the funds.
No money is going to go out unless you approve it. So
Right.
this resolution is not holding anything up. What this resolution will do, even as amended, the amendment, all it does is says the county council, which we have a fiduciary responsibility, and we're going to say, you can put it all together. Now, I personally think there should be a committee put together that comprised of DCED, the administration, county council, and if you want to bring anybody in for expertise, so be it. But that would be my recommendation. But this means that no dollars are going anywhere that don't come in front of this body first.
So my concern then, and I'm just asking,
That's what we're here for.
because you're amending this, is that going to slow down the distributions of funds to the small businesses?
No.
Because
You'll
we
be
also-
told it will, but it won't.
Well, hold on one sec. But
If we have
also,
more requests than we have money before December is over.
yeah, because we can disperse the funds. But my concern is that small businesses are hurting right now, and the need is immediate. And if we have to wait until the next county council meeting to approve individual disbursements of funds, isn't that going
How do we
to
do
delay those
all right.
funds?
No, fair enough, and I don't want to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I apologize. How do we do SIP grants? How do we do the others? I would say this, I do not want to disrupt, but there is no money ready to go out the door tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
All right? There is no reason why we can't handle this the way we've handled other funds that have come. This is $27 million that has been dropped in your lap. And what you're doing is you're signing off. You're saying, and this isn't a personal, in business and politics, it's not personal, but we've learned that people take it personally, and I'm sorry if you do. It is our responsibility to be involved in this. I mean, this is just fundamental. I don't know how you get around that. I mean, I know what your concern is. The concern could be, why have a county council if we just had one man running the county? You'd save a lot of time.
No, I do understand that.
All right.
But at the same time, we also gave Mr. McClure executive powers and jurisdiction to run emergency protocol, right? Emergency management.
Right.
I mean, and I understand Todd Weaver is, orchestrating the emergency management portion, but we have given Mr. McClure the opportunity to disperse funds for certain projects that go into the emergency. So would this not fall under that?
I don't believe it does. Now, the next one, though, I have to, Miss, are you finished, by the way, for now? No, she wants to
Sure.
talk.
No.
You're going to have to tell me when you're done, because I want to keep order here, so.
I understand.
If you're not finished, go ahead. I don't believe it does. I believe it's separate. We gave him authority under an emergency situation. We are moving out of that emergency situation. That's why we took some of the authority away.
No, I understand that. I just think for some small businesses that this is still a crisis.
It is a crisis.
And they're still gonna be
So
hurting
you have
for
to
a really long
explain to
time.
me specifically how doing this is going to hurt a small business. Because somebody's going to have to sit down, look, I just got this information this morning. I was
Right.
never consulted, I was never talked about this. I have a few hours and I'm asked to pass a resolution where I say I'm giving up county council authority for $27 million, and some groups can hand it out the way they see fit. The thing is, I'd rather, if a push came to shove, I'd vote to table the thing. I am just saying, and you can vote against the amendment to the resolution. The amendment to the resolution keeps us in the loop. If by some chance it creates a problem, and it means that some business isn't getting money that should get money, I'd be the first to say, hey, we've got to reevaluate this and turn these people loose. But if they have applications already, I'm concerned. I mean, I'd like to know, I haven't seen, we just got told the process.
Right, but part of the process is that they cannot receive more than $15,000. And if they received money already, they can only still receive up to $15,000. So they have to apply for it, and there's a cap at what can be dispersed to an individual entity. So my concern is that every day you keep the doors closed on a business, they lose money. Every day that you don't have the money and the capital to pay your employees or to continue your operations is another day that you fall further into debt and that you are unable to pay your employees.
Right.
This is one of the problems that has emerged with COVID. And so I think that because there is a cap on the $15,000, that we're not, I don't think our participation is necessary to oversee the administration or the receiving of each application and approval for each application. I think that it can be expedited quicker if we just allowed it to go as it's written.
So who would do it then? Who would give out the $15,000 loans?
Isn't that through the DCED?
No. It would be through the Chamber of Commerce, if I'm not mistaken.
But
Let's
in
be honest.
partnership.
We're giving the money to the partnership. We're giving the money to the chamber, and they're going to decide how much money goes out to who. And they'll make that decision. They'll take public tax money, and they will give that money out to who they think should get that money. I mean, one of the requirements is under 99 employees should be. Why not under 50 employees? I mean, I hope it's not all businesses.
But one of the requirements is also to prioritize Main Street businesses as well, isn't it?
Well, I mean, these are terms. I mean, if somebody can come up and give an accurate scientific definition to some of these terms, I'll be willing to listen. This is some of the mud you start to get your feet sinking into when you get into economic development talk. It's like, as Ms. Hefner will tell you, in human service, you have psychobabble. You can go in circles with that. When we're talking about money, there's always a plan to spend money. You'll always have groups that have plans to spend money. This is taxpayer money. It doesn't matter how it got to us. So there are people who are not business owners. There are people who are business owners. There are people who lost their jobs. There are people who get jobs back. There are people who have jobs, or people who will never get jobs back. You are the steward of their tax money. That is part of what you signed up for here. We're not just here to come in, as Jim Hemstreet said, once a year, pass the budget, go home, and don't bother these people. This is one of your fundamental responsibilities. It's dealing with county money. And once we get this, it's county money. And I want it spent in Northampton County, on Northampton County citizens, Northampton County
Do you
businesses.
perceive that the Chamber of Commerce would disperse it to Lehigh County as opposed to Northampton County businesses?
Ronald Reagan had a great quote, I'll give him that, and people hear me use it all the time. He says, like I said, it's not personal. Trust but verify. I think one of the duties of a Northampton County Council is to trust but verify. Again, I knew nothing, we were not consulted on the run-up to this. I got documents a few hours ago. And now I'm being asked to say, okay, sign off on any of this money. And we're gonna take care of it. So, I mean, up until Mr. Reedman, we didn't have a DCED. So the thing is, you had somebody who did CBDG grants. So it's grown, it's a bureaucracy, and I get it, well, it's here today. But at the end of the day, that doesn't take away your responsibility as a council person. Council used to give out the grants. Wait, we got people lined up, Mr. Kusick. So it's a matter of what you want to do. I happen to believe that we have to stay in the process. I happen to believe there's absolutely no evidence to indicate that we are going to slow up this money and we're going to shutter a business because of us taking responsibility for what we're supposed to do. So that is my take on it. This money is not going out tomorrow. It probably won't go out by next week. So the fact is they're going to have to get together. Let's say the chamber and DCE just sit down. They're going to be working on this. Well, what's wrong with you being involved? I'm not saying come to every council meeting. How do we do SIP? We've sat on SIP. We went over to DCED, we get all the applications, we sit down, we do it, we make a recommendation to council, say this is the money that should go out. And then
But
that's
is that
that.
what this is saying? So you're going to form like a separate little task
Right now, what
force?
this is saying is we're not passing a resolution that doesn't include county council in some form. That's what it's saying.
I understand that.
And we haven't worked out the details. But now it's going to force people to work out the details with us. Okay?
So you think that the subsequent details are going to be that they form a task force whereby,
I don't want a task force.
or what is it you said, that members of different groups would be available?
If they want. This is basically what we do with all other money we get in many ways. For example, the first thing we passed, DCD does it, but CACLV is involved, Rising Tide. It's a nonprofit. They've done this many times. They know what they're doing. All right, part of this is you're going to give money to the chamber, which was created by businesses for businesses. I know they're good people. Do I think they will not have any bias towards a member versus a non-member? I would hope not, but people do things when they're not even thinking. But also, they're going to charge you for this, too. I mean, they're not doing this for free out of the goodness of their heart. There's a VIG involved. I mean, I'm sorry, that's street talk. There is a fee involved on what they do. I don't think I'm mistaken in that. So there you go. Well, I mean, is there a fee? I don't want a long speech. Is there a fee?
There's 5% administration fee, yeah, which is below the industry standard.
Well, that's your opinion. So the thing is, there's a you're not recognized at this point. There's a 5% fee. So, I mean, they're getting some of this money in their pocket. I'm not saying they don't earn it, but I'm saying it's not necessary. They can be part of the process. This is not rocket science. I mean, I'm not suggesting we do something that has never been done before.
Right, I'm just asking
Well,
questions.
no, I've answered, I don't know how, I can't answer your question anymore because I've answered it a couple times.
Yep.
You don't feel that you feel this could hamper the efforts, and I disagree.
Mr. President,
I'm waiting on Ms.
Yeah,
Zirinsky.
sorry, even if you did have this amendment, you would still have to, they would still get their 5% administrative fee, would they not?
Not if they're not the ones that get the money. They're not going to get a cent until we approve it. If you don't pass it with us approving it, you've said, go ahead, do what you want to do with the money. Now, they said they'll give us reports, but that's after the fact. I mean, you are giving up any say in what happens with this money.
Okay.
You were next, but I do want to say, Peg, this is the man who was the chair of the committee, and he had asked, can I recognize him before you? Absolutely. Mr. Lott, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a lot of money, And it's a very important process we're entering into, and we have to move quickly, but we, more importantly, have to be diligent about this, and we have to make sure that what we're doing is correct. It is our responsibility. I agree with you, Mr. Chairman, 100%. This is why we're on council, to oversee our finances. This was discussed yesterday. The game plan was to use the chamber as like a third party, to market and do the legwork. They assured us yesterday that they would not be biased. And, you know, I happen to know the person personally that would be running it, and you know, I believe that. But back to Reagan's saying, you know, so all that being said, they're gonna set up, the chamber's gonna institute it. They're gonna come back to the county, and they're gonna go to the Department of Economic Development. They're gonna go to the administration. Why would we cut ourselves out of that loop? That's our duty, to be in that loop. We need to be we need a majority to sit on that committee, which is already gonna be there, Tara. This is, Mr. Zirinsky, this isn't something, I will not vote for a resolution that just hands the chamber the money and says, have a good time, you know, report back when you're done. I am not voting for that resolution. I will vote if we have oversight, which is why we were elected, to have oversight. We need, as the county council, to have that oversight. It doesn't slow it down. We meet every 2 weeks. This stuff is not gonna happen overnight. They have to get the applications filled out, sent to us. It's been, and we want to be part of that review. And there is nothing wrong with that. And if it takes an extra day or two, so be it. That is our duty, to have oversight of finances from this county. I think there's a lot more to talk about. Some of the things you brought up, you know, making sure, and I followed up with this, the chamber has to understand this is taxpayers' money. This is not something the chamber uses to promote the chamber. I believe the person in charge truly understands that. I believe she's very in touch with the different municipalities through our county, and already is figuring out ways to make sure she reaches out to all the businesses out there. But that is a very concerning issue. The chamber cannot create this to be their money. This is taxpayers' money, and we are responsible for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'm going to recognize Mrs. Ferraro because she's been patiently
So
waiting.
My question is, to help me understand this would mean that this would all be done in-house rather than through Rising Tide or the chamber?
Oh, no, Rising Tide, that was the first resolution. That was what we passed. No?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. He's the chair. I'll let him.
My understanding is that Rising Tide money comes out of the same $10 million that the chamber money comes out of. So I believe the number was 3 million or 2 million to Rising Tide. 2 million went to Rising Tide. And then the chamber was going to get a allotted amount, and our human services were going to get a allotted amount out of the 26. And the housing rent rebate was another 10, I believe. So that adds up to your, I didn't do the math right, but that adds up to it. So that's actually, Rising Tide is included in this ordinance.
I understand that, but I'm questioning the amendment. If the amendment, as Mr. Heckman passes, does that mean then that we will do it all in-house? That Chamber and Rising Tide will no longer be involved? Maybe they could sit on the committee or so forth, but basically it will be an in-house. We will not be giving them 5% to the chamber. That's what I need the clarification on.
Well, I understand. I mean, we haven't set anything up yet, but I would say this. This is just keeping us in the loop, and you see the problems we're having trying to keep us in the loop.
Right.
That's how county government's evolving, and I'm very concerned about that. The thing is, I would say this. Of course, they should be at the table. I mean,
Absolutely.
just as I want the chamber brings expertise. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I don't want the chamber involved. I mean, they do bring expertise, and if we have to pay them for the expertise, I guess that's the price of it. But I mean, I think ultimately, we have a DCED. Well, what do we have them for? I mean, they should be in charge of this, just like we do the other grants, and we will sit there. Whether or not you decide ultimately that you want to vote on every 15,000, or whether you take the suggestion of the committee, that's going to be council's preference. But as of tonight, I just did this because otherwise I can't support this resolution. I have a few hours. I have not had any discussions. No one's talked to me about this. I got this handed, I had Linda send it to me this morning. I said, did I miss some mail or something? So within a few hours, I'm asked to make a decision for $27 million of taxpayer money. I mean, I'm sorry. I agree with the executive's plans. We've agreed with him. I don't think there's anything he's wanted we haven't given him. And I think he's done a great job. But we have a job to do too. And from my perspective, me as an individual council member, I can, in good conscience, sitting here, vote to just say, here, take the money, and hopefully you'll give us reports, whenever. I just can't do that. So that's where I'm standing. As far as the fine print goes, I barely had enough time to read the material I was given on the actual plan, much less come up with fine points. I just wanted to cover council's collective responsibility backside. So that's where I'm at on this. That's pretty much it, Mr. Mr. Cusick.
Yeah, so Mr. Heckman, I'm going to be supporting your amendment, but I think that this can't be like what we do with SIP and with the hotel tax grants. There's just not enough time. So I do understand Ms. Zirinsky's point. So it would be my question or my suggestion that what we do is we approve your amendment, then the resolution, and then we have the administration come back to us, in 2 weeks or in 4 weeks with what exactly they intend to spend the money on. Because I remember at one point, there was a time where we were asked to approve the hotel tax with no place to spend it. That was, I don't know who else was here at that point, but Peg, you were. And that didn't go over too well. So I understand your point. But I just would ask that they just come back to us rather than we set up a committee and review applications. I would prefer to have them drive it and then, July 2nd and then July 16th that they come back to us. Can that be done in that short of a time period? That's a question, yeah. Can you turn it around that quickly?
Yes and no. I mean, so just to put everyone's mind at ease, you will have the opportunity to approve all of the municipal grants. So the municipalities will make application, will make recommendations to you, and no money will go out the door before council has an opportunity to take an up and down vote on every single grant, every single municipal grant. With the Rising Tide Loan Fund, they'll tell us whose applications they've approved, and before they tell the applicant whether they've been approved or not, we'll bring it here to county council so you can review them all. We'll bring them all to the Economic Development Committee. You can go through all of the applications, all of the supporting document. We'll talk about it, and you can then decide whether you're going to approve those loans or not. With respect to the chamber, we'll bring every single one of the more than 300 anticipated $15,000 grants to county council. That may, from time to time, delay a grant to a business up to 3 weeks or a month, depending on how your meetings fall. But that's what we'll do, because that's how our government works. So I think we're going to be just fine. Yeah, Ms. Zirinsky's right. It's going to slow the process down. So what's the point of the CARES Act? The point of the CARES Act is to get the money into the struggling small businesses' hands as fast as possible. But I also understand Mr. Heckman's overall philosophical point. He wants to review each of these grants, and he's going to get a chance to go through and review them all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and all we're doing here is putting in writing what he just said. So, I mean, again, trust but verify. Mr. Myers, you have a question?
Not a question, but a statement.
Go ahead, Mr. Myers.
Listening to all this, and I'm joining you, Mr. Heckman, because I had computer problems. I'm seeing this for the first time today. And I had some reservations. But I have to agree that I'm going to back this resolution because of the fact that it is our job. We're the stewards of taxpayers' money. And we got to do our job. I understand Tara's, or Ms. Zirinsky's point of view too, of getting it to it rapidly as possible. But we have to do what we're elected to do. With that, I'm backing the resolution.
All right, thank you. Are there any other, Mr. McGee?
I just want to make a comment about the timing. I don't see why they can't put this together in, say, 3 parts. So the first round, boom. Second round, boom. Instead of waiting and gathering and waiting and gathering, you know. I think maybe there could be a method.
Hold on. No, come on, guys, on the side. Go
I
ahead,
think
Mr.
there
McGee.
possibly could be a method of expediting a batch. Get a batch ready and push it out. Get another batch ready and push it out, okay? You know, I think it's an idea that might resonate with getting the approvals out sooner than later.
Are you finished then?
Yeah.
Mr. McGee? Mr. Lott?
Yeah, I had a question on the tail end. You know, I'm kind of new at this. I understand Rising Tide, when we give them a lot of leeway and have used them in the past. My understanding is Rising, who is going to be writing these checks? From Rising Tide writes the check and then we reimburse? And the same question would go for the chamber. Is the chamber writing the check and we reimbursing them? I don't know how. I don't know how that looks.
Well, Mr. Barron's here, if you want to, I mean, this is a problem when you don't get a lot of information and you're asked to move on something as big as this.
I can speak to Rising Tide because
Yeah.
it's been done for years this way. Council makes an approval of a bunch of money. The last time, I believe it was, how much money was it? $250,000. They have experts at Rising Tide who actually review these businesses. They look to make sure they are creditworthy. They require collateral, and they do a lot of things that we are not able to do in DCED or in the Department of Fiscal Affairs for that matter. With the way we envisioned the $5 million portion that was going to go to the Chamber of Commerce was along that same route. Council approved it. It was just the small portion for small businesses because there was a huge portion we wanted to get out to people with that $15,000 cap. The money would go in bulk to the Chamber of Commerce. All the rules were laid out to make sure they were Northampton County businesses. They did not have to be members of the Chamber of Commerce to receive the funds because people who are members and non-members, small businesses under that certain amount are reaching out and they were left behind. The chamber did a wonderful job getting money out from their foundation. However, they couldn't help everyone. This allows us to help them. We're not writing the checks. This will allow the chamber to get that money out to these applicants who will have their tax ID numbers. We'll know a lot of information about them. We will know that they are legitimate businesses because the chamber can vet them for us, which is what that 5% goes for. If they're waiting 2 weeks to come back to county council, the chamber can get this money out in 2 to 3 days once an application is approved. So it is going to slow down the process.
Well, you know what? It'll slow down the process. Excuse me, Mr. Barron, since you came up to talk, do you mind waiting? Thank you. The thing is, I get it, and you guys are going to make the pitch. I understand. The deal with this is, one is, with democratic institutions, things slow down. I mean, you know, what was our friend that used to come in and say Mussolini made the trains come on time? So the thing is, I mean, we can get into those kind of esoteric governmental discussions. It isn't just about approving the money going out, and I know that's come up. You really want to sit there and say who gets $15,000 and who doesn't? I mean, I already said, I think it should be people with under 50 employees in many cases, but I wasn't asked my opinion. The point is, I want to know who the applicants are, because telling me who you're giving it to is the process is over. I don't know who applied and who was told, no, 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 we're not giving it to you. I mean, I used the example of Spadoni and Ferraro spaghetti shops. Spadoni is not a member of the chamber. Ferraro is a member of the chamber. They both applied for money. Now, I'm not saying it was wrong or right, but she got the loan and he didn't. Now, next January, when he shows up at county council and looks at us, not you, looks at us and says, what the heck's going on with you guys? I mean, why was I shafted? What do you know? And we're going to sit here, and if people want to do that, they're fine with me. I'm not going to. And say, well, I don't know. We don't know. We handed the money off to them, and they told us everything will be just dandy, and they're good people. And I'm sure they are. They're wonderful people. And will it slow it up? It may slow it up. Government slows things up. It's what it does. Are people going to shutter their business after months and months and months because council wants to exercise some legal oversight? I don't think so. I'm not buying it. You can sell it. Maybe somebody will buy it. I'm not buying it.
I believe okay.
I think I still had the floor. Steve, so, Mr. Barron.
Oh, wait a minute. You asked him a question.
I asked him a question. Who's writing these checks? And I think he just told me Rising Tide does, and I understand they always did.
And they've done that.
And I understand now the chamber's going to write the check. And my understanding, I think the visual appearance of that businesses getting a check from the chamber, that's taxpayers' money. I understand it's a good flow, but the optics, in my opinion, stink. Thank you.
All right.
The floor yet. I am in favor of using the chamber to market this, to put it together. I am in full favor of that. I think they have the expertise and the tools, but I think we deserve the oversight of it. And maybe it's the best way to do it, but I will say I don't like the way it looks. The chamber writing checks out to businesses that are taxpayers' money. I would like to see that kind of pulled back. If it really screws things up, I can live with it. But I think it would be a lot cleaner if those were coming from our economic department. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Heckman.
All right. Ms. Zirinsky, we'll wait because I know you're going to.
Oh, no, I have questions for Steve Barron then.
All right. Well, Ms. Hefner.
I guess my concern is just hearing like that if we choose to pass this amendment, that it automatically is going to slow down the process and, people are going to close their doors. I don't think that has to be true. I think our participation and our doing our job shouldn't mean that this all of a sudden becomes a train that goes to a full stop. The process is already in place. The conversations have already been had. And I think what council's asking for is oversight and participation in the process. That's not hard to do. Several members can make themselves available if they need to. And we have a meeting again on July 2nd. And if we need to have something sooner, an emergency meeting, because that's necessary, then that can happen too. But I don't think that we make it dire. I mean, there's been a crisis for 3 months. And just because we say the word crisis doesn't mean things are going to happen tomorrow. But, taking one extra step, I don't think is going to cause anybody undue hardship. It might actually help some people who weren't being considered in the first place. And that's why I'm in support of this amendment.
There's always a push and pull between branches of government. I mean, I'm going to hear this is going to be a terrible thing. We're not slowing anything. In fact, we don't have to wait for a meeting. If the committee is set up between next week, or we can set it up for Tuesday, we'll get together and we'll do what we have to do. Mrs. Ferraro.
I have a question about that 5% fee.
Who do you have it for? Who's your question directed to?
Well, whomever negotiated the fee deal with the chamber. If my math is correct, we're going to be giving them $1,350,000 to administer this. That's 5% of 27
Well, Mr.
million.
Kusik's shaking his head violently,
Mr. Kusik, you're a math person. Help me.
It's 5% of 4 million.
Oh, 4? Okay.
Which comes to what? $200,000. Thank you. So you're paying them $200,000.
Still a lot of money.
Yes, it is.
Still a lot of money. Why can't they do it for 2%? or 1% or 3%.
Hold on.
If they want to help business, why are they not charging the very most minimum to pay their employees?
There's a line from an old movie. If you're good at something, don't do it for free. But I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, but that's.
Ms. Zirinsky, go ahead.
I have questions for Steve Barron. Sorry to keep making you come back and forth.
He's been working out. This is good for him.
This is good exercise, eh?
Yeah, it's
So
okay.
previously, we had a grant from the county for businesses. Am I correct? It was like $250,000 that we were offering as an emergency fund for small businesses.
No,
That was a loan.
it's rising.
The
tide.
Rising Tide loan,
Yeah,
sorry.
it's a loan
But we
program.
allowed Rising Tide to administer that loan.
Yes, we have.
And we did not check who that loan was being given out to before it was doled out. Is that correct?
There are checks and oversights into the system, but we don't make the loan decisions, no.
This council does not make the loan decisions. So we trusted before that that money was going to be administered.
They actually, Mr. Hudak, who actually administers them,
Right.
so we had him here tonight because we thought there might be questions.
Yeah.
And he can sort of speak to that particular aspect of it.
But isn't that what we've discussed this?
It was what we're doing right now, very successfully,
Yes,
with the CACLV's Rising Tide Loan Fund.
right.
Fairly
So
reputable.
if we're looking at dispersing $27 million, right? If we divide that up, even if everybody got the maximum of $15,000, which we know they're not because they already had the PPP and the, i.e., the other loan, right?
Right.
So we're looking at almost 2,000 individual grants
No.
to approve.
So that Chambers, the grant program is we're only thinking 4 million.
For the group.
Yeah, and for the loan program, we're thinking 2.
Okay.
But I think it's important to hear from Chris about the specifics of the loan program and approving each individual loan.
Well,
Yes.
well, hold on. He
oh,
has to
sorry.
be recognized first. Are you finished
Oh,
then?
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any other, go ahead.
Before Chris comes up, I think
Yeah.
this is,
Yeah, he
the
has to be
the executive stated 5% is actually a little less than the standard, but standard. I mean, we've used Rising Tide in the past very successfully. What do they get? What do we pay the county? So I'd like that added to his explanation, just to,
All right, when he
you know,
comes up, he can address
you.
that too. And just to be clear, with Rising Tide and CACLV, we've worked with them for years. And they've distributed money, you've been, so, I mean, all kinds of different ways, all right? So again, this is, first of all, you're really reading a lot into the weeds on this one line that was changed, but, you know, I understand. You
No, I'm
want to
trying get
understand it.
grasp of This whole entire thing, because.
Well,
I
there's
don't
not a
think
whole
it
lot
has-
to this whole
That's
entire
right, There's
thing.
not a whole lot to this. It doesn't articulate all the ins and outs. And so I'm trying to figure out what it is that we're actually going to do.
But we haven't, first of all, we haven't had it articulated to us what exactly the ins or outs were with the original resolution.
Well,
Well, and I think
part of
that's my point is,
too.
I'm sort of saying, take a second. It's nice you're offering us reports. It's nice you're being transparent. It's a good thing. But council is going to memorialize in writing the fact that we are going to want to be part of how this works out. So, how that works out, we have yet to determine. That's all. If you don't put it in the resolution, it doesn't exist. I mean, people can make promises to you, and that's what it is. It's a promise.
But I understand that, but the 4 million breakdown and the 2 million breakdown to Rising Tide aren't in this resolution either. There's a lot of details missing from this resolution.
Well,
amendment.
all right, so I mean, but I guess I'm missing your point. This resolution isn't the whole if you want the resolution to be every piece of material they handed to us, it's not. The resolution is pretty straightforward. I mean, I have no problem with the resolution as it's written. I think it's concise. The administration wrote it and handed it to us. I mean, and it's fine. Now, what is often the case, in fact, I guess I'm dating myself. In our time, our council clerk would review resolutions that administrations wrote, and we would change it accordingly to suit the needs and desires of the county council. Generally, we pass the resolution that's handed to us. Somebody wrote this for us. It was handed to us, and they're asking us to pass it. I'm saying I'm willing to pass it after if with a certain amendment. And the only change is, as I'm saying, I'm putting into writing what you're promising to do. I haven't gotten into any, we're going to set this up now or that up now or any of that stuff. That would have to be determined. I don't know. I don't know what else to say to you, Mr. Zirinsky. I mean, it's either you vote for it or you don't.
Anything. I'm just trying to figure out the ins and outs of this, and so I'm asking questions.
I don't think they could even tell you tonight all the ins and outs of this. And if they can, then I'd be really nervous because, you know, this hasn't officially gone out yet. So would you please come up and speak? Because I think there's some questions for you. Yeah, and please be the microphone because I don't want to get an angry text from listeners, so.
Understood. So, good evening,
Good
everybody.
evening.
I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Right now, I'll speak to the Rising Tides process on how we, handle the loans. So, handling the loan, literally, we're taking the small business applicant from beginning to end. So, part of our basic underwriting is, besides the paperwork that they complete, we're looking at business plans. We're looking at cash flow projections because ultimately it is the business that we want to pay us back, not the individual, okay? And if the business isn't able to pay us back, the loan's not gonna be approved. We don't lend based on collateral. It's often needed, it's often desired because sometimes, no matter what you look at, things go haywire, okay? So we're going through credit reports, we're going through, which will tell us obviously how they pay their debts. It will tell us often, but not always, whether or not they're paying their taxes. That is dependent on whether or not the entity that was not paid taxes.
Oh, I apologize. This is my fault. Would you please identify yourself officially for the clerk?
Sure.
And people
Chris
listening?
Hudak, Director of Rising Tide Community Loan Fund. As I was saying, it will sometimes tell us if taxes are not being paid. That is up to the entity that was not paid, whether or not they've obtained the judgment and recorded that, okay? As I mentioned, the cash flow projection is going to indicate whether or not the business, based on what they're telling us their revenue has been historically, because we're looking at tax returns, what they're projecting it's going to be will be sufficient to cover their expenses, okay? Then if the loan is approved, and the loans are approved right now, it is going either myself, I have a limit that I can approve to, I can deny any request. Above my limit goes to my loan committee. Okay, that's the process we currently have in place because those loans are sitting on my book, okay? And how my portfolio performs determines whether or not the Rising Tide performs, okay? And what I mean by that is we are certified by the U.S. Treasury. To maintain that certification, I've got to keep my portfolio at a certain standard. We borrow money from other organizations, banks, counties, cities. There is often covenants in those loan agreements that I need to control delinquency to a certain level. And if I fail to do that, I could be in default on our loans. Been there 15 years, we haven't defaulted and we're not going to, okay? Beyond just a simple act of taking the application, underwriting it, dispersing the funds, I now have it on my books for years, okay? And years can be anywhere from 1 to 15 years that we are working with that borrower, okay? So on a monthly basis, we're posting payments. If we don't get payments, we're contacting them, okay? We're reporting to credit bureaus. We're filing reports on a consistent basis, okay? Worst case scenario, if they don't pay us, then we're proceeding legally to try to recover those assets. So it can be a very simple process or it can be a very complicated process, okay? That literally can go on, as I said, from anywhere from 1 year is our shortest term, 15 years is our longest term.
There are some questions. Ms. Ferrara.
If I'm a business owner, do I apply to you or do I apply to the chamber? Or do I apply to both for this money?
If you're applying for the loan, you would apply to me. If you're applying for the grant, you would go to the chamber. Two different pots of money is my understanding.
Yeah, you will have your own
yeah.
pot of money, is my understanding. And how long have you been working with the county?
Well, I've been at the Rising Tide 15 years, and our first loan, it's over 10 years ago.
And we've been doing grants with you over the years. And I think this sort of gets to the heart of it a little bit. This isn't about saying, we're sitting here saying we're going to pick this, pick that. This man has a track record. His agency has a track record. It's a nonprofit. No, and I'm just saying this for. So my concern is blasting the idea that council wants to stop everything. That's not it at all. The decision may be made, well, they have a track record. They've been doing this. Why would we get in their way? That can be a decision we make too. All this is saying tonight is, at some point, we are going to be part of these decisions. The decision may be, I don't want to see every grant that he gets, but I may sure as hell want to see every grant that somebody else gets. That is your right. That's your right. This isn't a court of law. This is government. I mean, I mean, Mr. McClure is one of the smartest executives we've ever had, and I don't give compliments lightly because I never get them. He's probably the most articulate and smartest guy we've had, and he's a good lawyer. And you can tell when he comes up. It's like, I'd hate to be on the other side. He pleads his cases. But at the end of the day, we're talking about government here. This isn't like a judge saying this is legal, this is not legal. This is about government. So I'm sorry, Peg, but I just wanted to differentiate, because this man's been thrown in the pot now with everybody that somehow we've got to look over his shoulder. And I have no intention of wanting to look over his shoulder. Mrs. Ferraro,
I have been
continue.
impressed with Rising Tide for years, so I have no problem with that. What I don't understand that I have, okay, now with my spaghetti shop or whatever I have,
There you go.
how do I know? Why would I go to you for a loan if I can go to the chamber for a grant that I don't have to pay back?
If that grant meets your needs, you should not come to me for a loan, honestly, okay? That's the simple answer, okay?
The only way you couldn't get the.
You're out of order.
Sorry.
Mr. Lott.
So this is all new to us, so I'm a little confused, because I thought Rising Tide was also going to give grants out, but you are only going to give loans out of your 2 million, I think, was what we heard you again. So that is not grants you're giving out, that is only loans.
Correct.
Interesting. But this money was for grants, I thought.
No.
No? It can be for loans, too? Okay.
Rising Tide.
Right, hold it.
All right, we're all getting educated on this, so, that's what we're
it's
trying to do here.
After the fact education, that's the tough thing.
And then I still would like to know what your organization, just to compare to what we're doing at Chamber, quite frankly. I mean, I know your track record. I'm not questioning, and I know there's a lot of work to make sure that fraud doesn't happen, how you guys are loaning money out and collecting. I get all that. I'm just trying to use a comparison. What do you charge our county for your services? Is it 5%? Is it 3%? Is it 10%?
In this proposal, it is at 5%. What that will cover, in addition to our operating costs, that will eliminate the application fee, because there is cost associated with credit reports if there is collateral involved, securing that collateral, okay?
And that's pretty much standard for you, 5%? I mean, I'm trying to gauge, what I'm trying to do is understand that 5% is industry-wide, that's, and I'm just looking for that input,
For the Rising Tide Community Loan Fund, our standard interest rate, and understand under this program, that interest rate will be 0. Our average interest rate is 9.5%. So at 5%, this will be significantly less.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I mean, and nobody's begrudging, it's just getting it out on the table. Let's get all the facts on the table, but certainly that's fine. Ms. Vargo Hefner.
Could you remind me, I was here yesterday, but the numbers are muddled. Is there a maximum amount of loan that someone can come to? Is there a cap on a loan that they can request from you?
You mean under this proposed
Yes, sir.
program? It is, my understanding, it is being discussed, the existing program as it exists today is at $15,000. I believe there's conversation about that possibly being increased to 20, okay, just because of demand. And what I mean by demand is requests from applicants.
And again, how would you differentiate, okay, so who would go for a grant versus who would come to a loan? Someone who didn't get a grant would then come to you? Is it
Somebody who
default, or-
did not get a grant, or somebody where the grant was not sufficient to cover their needs.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Discussion, Mr. McGee.
The clarification, your Rising Tide was basically created to give businesses a loan that couldn't get a loan from the banks. Is that correct?
That is who we work with, yes, okay? If
That's
you
why
are
it's at 9%.
Correct. If you are bankable, we send you to the bank. If there's a grant available, we're going to tell you to take that grant. We're going to fund you when nobody else will at a rate that accepts the risk we're taking, okay? The fact that we often borrow funds and we're paying a cost for those funds we're borrowing. And that's why that rate is sent there. And it incentivizes the borrower to become bankable, we don't have a prepayment penalty. So when you're able to pay us off, you pay us off. We don't argue, we don't negotiate, you go to your bank.
And for these new loans, is that going to be for startup businesses too, or just incumbent businesses?
The Rising Tide has always provided funding to both startups and existing. I would anticipate this would be for
With the
both.
CARES?
Yes.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the gentleman? Thank you very much for your information. If there's no further discussion, I'm going to ask for the vote on the amendment.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes?
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yeah.
Mrs. Ferraro.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Lot.
Yes.
Mr. McGee.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
No.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 8-1.
Okay, now we will have, if you want, a discussion on the resolution as amended. Is there any discussion on the resolution as amended? Seeing none, call for the vote.
Mr. Lot.
Yes.
Mr. McGee.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mrs. Ferraro.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
All right, very good. That was fun. Now let's go to number 4, consideration of Article 13, contract resolutions. We have Sardoni Construction Services. And Ms. Vargo Hefner, would you introduce the resolution?
Now therefore be it resolved that the Northampton County Council does hereby concur with the recommendation of the county executive as set forth in the attached documentation to approve an amendment to the contract with Sardoni Construction Services for the additional amount of $490,064.56.
Any discussion? Seeing none, call for the vote.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Mr. McGee. Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mrs. Ferraro.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes,
Mr. Lot.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 8-0.
thank you. Next, we have Windgap Electric. Ms. Vargo Hefner, introduce the resolution.
Now therefore be it resolved that the Northampton County Council does hereby concur with the recommendation of the county executive as set forth in the attached documentation to approve an amendment to the contract with Windgap Electric for the additional amount of $50,991.23, excuse me.
Any discussion? Seeing none, call for the vote.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mrs. Ferraro.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes,
Mr. Lot.
Yes.
Mr. McGee. Adopted by a vote of 8-0.
you're on a roll. Go ahead, Ms. Hefner.
Now therefore be it resolved that the Northampton County Council does hereby concur with the recommendation of the county executive as set forth in the attached documentation to approve an amendment to the contract with JBM Mechanical Incorporated for the additional amount of $95,038.78.
Discussion. Seeing none, call for the vote.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mrs. Ferraro.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes,
Mr. Lot.
Yes.
Mr. McGee. Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 8-0.
thank you. Ms. Vargo Hefner.
Now therefore be it resolved that Northampton County Council does hereby concur with the recommendation of the county executive as set forth in the attached documentation to approve an amendment to the contract with Myco Mechanical for the additional amount of $47,493.25.
Very good. Any discussion? Call for the vote.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mrs. Ferraro.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes,
Mr. Lot.
Yes.
Mr. McGee.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
I think you have one more, right?
Yes. Now therefore be it resolved that the Northampton County Council does hereby concur with the recommendation of the county executive as set forth in the attached documentation to approve a contract with Simone Collins Landscape Architecture for the Mincy Trail Corridor Greenway Stewardship Plan.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, call for the vote.
Yes.
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 Thank you. Is there any other new business to discuss? Seeing none, by the way, I have not been approached by Ms. Shavnisky, who's been in the back and monitoring this meeting on YouTube. And apparently, we're doing a good job. We'll find out. Anyway, if there's no other new business, council committee reports. Anybody have a committee report? Ms. Vargo Hefner.
I need to announce that I need to move the Human Services meeting to 5 PM on July 2nd.
Okay.
And that's it.
That's it.
Agenda to be determined.
Any other committee reports? Mr. Lott?
Then I'm going to be moving to economic development in place of her meeting, so we're just switching the times. What time was it, 10?
3:30.
3:30.
10 AM. No, 3:30.
3:30, thank you.
So your meeting then would be at 3:30 for economic development? And Mr. Lott, hopefully you and I can get in touch with DCED and we can talk about what we can do going forward to expedite the process. This isn't an adversarial situation. This is something we want to get done too. So we'll hear what's going on. All right. Any other committee reports? Seeing none? Liaison? No liaison?
I have.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go
Due
ahead.
to a change in my employment, I need to relinquish my Lanta membership, so if anybody else wants to take that up, I can't make it due to employment conflict.
Okay, well, I would say this then, they'll get in touch with me, let me know. Make sure you know when the meeting, I'm sorry, what, Mr. Myers?
I didn't quite get what Lori was saying.
Oh, I'm sorry. Lori said that due to employment requirements, she will be unable to remain a liaison to the Lanta. And she's giving that up. So anyone who's interested, get in touch with me, think about it, be sure you know when the meetings are, if you can make it, and we'll go from there. Are there any other liaison reports? Ms. Zirinsky?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that last time I gave a report for the Farmland Preservation Board, and all the farms on the list will be funded this year. That any money that I indicated was going to be a shortfall because of the state budget only pertained to any potential farms that would be on a second round, which we are not going to do, okay?
Okay. Any other reports? Mr. Giovanni,
Yeah, Chairman.
one of the most important.
The IT committee met. They didn't have a meeting in May, but they had one in June. They had some setbacks because of the pandemic, so they moved some of their projects back, but now they're all going forward. Everything's updates, all their other work that they have been going. The only thing that they did put on hold right now, I think, is the review of the VPN access, but everything else is going forward. They're still waiting for some software, for the blacklisting software for the passwords. Bob's working on, Mr. Mesa's working on that. Also, I talked to him about the cameras. He did the inventory for the cameras. He's going forward as putting the cameras into place where needed, and also asked him about the camera back in our area where our cubicles are. He said he is also working on that. As far as that, everything is going along, and you got your list for everybody else, your tablets, and I'm hoping that all our council people that wanted new equipment has scheduled and got their stuff. Other than that, everything is just hunky-dory, moving along.
Very good. Any other liaison reports? Seeing none, council clerk report? Council solicitor report?
Question for the clerk.
By all means, Mr. McGee.
It was brought up today that maybe we can get some screens for the dais so we can all be up there. Similar to the one that's in in there. 2 by 3, because maybe you could hear us better if we could pull our respirator down, and we could all be at the dais up at the big table up there. So that would be helpful, and it was a good idea, I think. So I don't know.
Nothing wrong with
if it's
that.
feasible. I don't know if it passes, the county, the requirements, but I think it's important.
We can look into
And
it.
I'd like to see it at the next one, and please call me if I could be of any help. I will certainly help to make that happen, but again,
Well, if it's
to
a-
make sure we're abiding by all the rules and regulations.
If it's a problem, we can have Mr. Lott and you do it, since you are skilled at that type of work. We'll buy the materials. All right,
If that's what it comes to.
okay. I ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're out of here.